Right now, as you listen to this, you're probably sitting in a room or maybe a car or just walking down a street that you think is, relatively empty.
Right.
But according to the sprawling, honestly mind-bending cosmology we are unpacking today, you are actually sharing that exact space with hundreds of millions of invisible lives.
Yeah, it's a framework that completely dismantles the physical reality we basically all accept as absolute truth. I mean, it treats our tangible everyday world as just one tiny, super dense fraction of a much larger, much stranger cosmic picture.
It really does. And that is our mission for this deep dive. We're exploring a really dense spiritual doctrine that maps out a universe that's overlapping our own.
Right, like a hidden architecture of reality.
Exactly. And it focuses heavily on a concept known as the Elysium world. So, okay, let's unpack this because to even approach this paradigm, we have to split existence into two fundamentally different types of universes.
Precisely. You basically have to start by drawing a hard line between the physical and the formless.
Right. So on one side of the line, we have what this worldview calls the positive universe.
Which is the reality we think we understand, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's physical, it's tangible, you can see it, touch it, measure it. But crucially, everything inside the positive universe is subject to time.
Right, the clock is always ticking.
Always. Things are born, they age, and they eventually decay. And it's not just Earth, right? This positive universe includes higher, more advanced physical realms too, which this cosmology refers to as the 1,000-year world and the 10,000-year world.
Yeah, and just to clarify those terms really quickly, the 1,000-year and 10,000-year worlds are still part of the material objective existence.
So there's still physical spaces.
Exactly. They're physical spaces where beings might have incredibly extended lifespans, like living thousands of years, but because they are still in that positive universe, the clock is ticking. Cause and effect, birth, decay, all of that still governs those spaces.
Got it. But then we cross the line into the negative universe. And this is where the Elysium world exists. And it operates on the exact opposite rules.
Yeah. What's fascinating here is how the mechanics of this negative universe are laid out. It is described as a fantasy realm, and it uses that word very deliberately.
To contrast with the rigid stuff of our world.
Exactly. To contrast with materiality. In the Elysium space, time as we experience it effectively disappears. Objects and entities don't exist because they have like a physical atomic structure. They exist purely by their nature.
I want to make sure we're getting the mechanics of that right, because it's tricky. What does it actually mean to exist by your nature instead of, by your atoms?
Well, think of it as existing as pure essence. So in our physical world, a chair is a chair because wood was chopped, carved, and assembled into a specific shape. Right?
Why is Bill?
But in the Elysium world, an entity exists eternally as a formless truth. Now, if it needs to interact or manifest, it can temporarily take on a physical form, but that form is just a fleeting projection. Yeah, the true eternal existence is entirely formless. And this negative universe, by the way, is what traditional Buddhism often refers to as the Western Elysium world, or the Buddha land.
Which leads to this incredible paradox that I just couldn't stop thinking about. If you ask where this Elysium world is located, the answer is that it's simultaneously millions of billions of light years away, completely separate from our daily grind, and yet...
It's right here.
Yes, it is physically encompassing everything right around you at this very moment. Your own body is inside it right now.
I like to call it a localized eternity. In terms of sheer volume, it's exactly the same size as the Earth universe. It perfectly overlaps our physical reality.
Occupying the exact same space.
Right, occupying the same space, but it functions on an entirely different frequency. It encompasses everything, from the macro structure of galaxies all the way down to the microstructure of atoms.
So, the obvious question is, how do we even begin to interact with a universe that is literally everywhere but completely invisible to our human eyes?
Right.
To understand that, we have to scale down from the cosmic level to something you, listening right now, experience every single night. We have to look at dreaming.
This is one of my favorite parts. In this framework, the dream space is the negative space.
Wait, literally?
Literally. When you dream, you are not just experiencing, an internal hallucination generated by your synapses. You are genuinely interacting with the architecture of the negative universe.
Okay, and the vividness of that interaction isn't just random static from your subconscious. According to this paradigm, The scale and clarity of the world you build in your dreams is strictly determined by a few specific factors.
Yeah, it's not random at all.
Right. It's based on your perception, your waking life experience, your thinking ability, and the purity of your spiritual nature.
And the variations are quite striking, honestly. If you possess an incredibly pure spiritual nature, your dreams will naturally reflect that higher frequency.
Like what kind of dreams?
Well, you might find yourself interacting with Buddhas or gods. You might see brilliant suns, vivid rainbows, or experience that really distinct sensation of flying.
Oh, I've had flying dreams. They're amazing.
Right. And for those with high spiritual purity, they might actually be visually accessing those colorful environments of the 1,000-year and 10,000-year worlds while their physical body sleeps.
But on the flip side, many people will go their entire lives without ever experiencing a dream like that.
Yeah, unfortunately.
If your thinking ability is constrained, your dreams are going to look exactly like your mundane, everyday reality. You're just dreaming about walking down the street, sitting in traffic, or filing paperwork.
It's a direct functional correlation. The deeper your perception in waking life, the more capable you are of navigating the negative space while asleep.
That explains so much.
It really does. This is why some individuals can literally solve complex, real-world problems in their sleep. Their deep perception allows them to access solutions in the overlapping negative space that simply aren't apparent in the dense physical positive space.
Okay, let's try to map the mechanism here. Are we essentially saying the human brain acts like a biological holographic projector?
Oh, I like that analogy.
Because there's this fascinating concept introduced that a single human cell or single drop of blood reflects the entirety of the human body.
Right.
And by that same logic, the human brain reflects the entirety of the universe, both the positive and negative spaces. So is our capacity to dream just our physical brain tuning its antenna to the frequency of this overlapping negative space?
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it. The brain essentially serves as the biological receiver for this cosmic broadcast.
Got it.
However, there is a crucial limitation to that holographic analogy. While the brain can reflect the universe, human imagination itself is fundamentally limited.
Right, we just don't have the processing power to render the whole thing.
Exactly. Even from the vantage point of negative space within a dream, human imagination, no matter how rich, cannot grasp the whole picture. We can dip our toes into the Elysium world through dreams, relying on our daily perception.
But we can't see all of it.
No. To truly enter and comprehend the Elysium world in its entirety, one needs a specific resonant frequency, which is referred to here as Buddhist nature.
Okay, Buddhist nature.
Yeah. Without that specific spiritual tuning, the vastness of Elysium remains completely incomprehensible. You can't intellectualize your way into it, you have to resonate with it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So if our minds can access this negative universe through dreams, let's flip the perspective for a second.
Okay.
Imagine you were standing fully in the Elysium world, looking back at the physical Earth. What does our reality look like from the other side of the mirror?
It looks fundamentally unrecognizable. From the perspective of Elysium, the physical traits we use to identify one another, our faces, our height, our clothing, our flesh and blood, they simply do not register.
Right, because physical matter isn't the primary currency there. Instead, human beings appear as columns of light, which is just a stunning visual.
It really is beautiful.
You aren't a person with a job. You are a shifting pillar of luminous energy. And these columns vary wildly from person to person.
Drastically so. In our physical reality, we all share a basic blueprint, right? 2 arms, 2 legs. But in the Elysium world, those columns of light tell an unvarnished truth.
Like what? How different can they be?
Well, some individuals are barely visible at all. They manifest as almost formless or as a very dim, weak column. Others might show up as a vibrant red light. And then there are those who appear as towering pillars, radiating 7 distinct colors.
Wow.
And the height and the vibrancy of these columns are in constant flux, too.
So what is the mechanism behind that? If it's not based on your physical health or your biology, what makes one person a towering 7-colored pillar and the person standing next to them practically invisible?
It is dictated by something called spiritual mass.
Spiritual mass.
Yes. This mass is formed by 2 main components. First, there's a baseline essence you were born with. But the defining variable factor is how that mass is shaped over time by enduring, persistent belief.
So it's basically a process of self-refinery or self-improvement.
Exactly. Long-term, dedicated spiritual improvement actively changes the mass and nature of your light column. You are literally gathering spiritual density.
Right.
But And there's a sharp warning attached to this. Enduring self-deterioration changes your mass just as effectively.
Oh, man. So it goes both ways.
Yes. Every persistent thought, every action, and every deeply held belief is literally sculpting the size, color, and brightness of your presence in the Elysium world.
And it isn't just humans walking around as like columns, right?
Yeah.
This worldview expands the idea of hidden existence to a staggering degree.
Oh, absolutely.
It claims that from the perspective of Elysium, life is absolutely everywhere. It posits that there are hundreds of millions of invisible lives actively swarming in the empty space of your bedroom right now.
Yeah.
It describes thousands of invisible rivers flowing through the sky above our heads.
And it goes much further than our immediate atmosphere, too. It claims life exists deep under the ground, locked inside solid stone and buried in ancient ice.
Inside solid stone.
Yeah, and it states there is life thriving on the surface of the sun, life traveling inside rays of light, life riding on radio waves, and even life existing perfectly well in the total vacuum of space.
Okay, I have to push back hard on this. I can follow the logic that humans have a spiritual energy signature based on their actions. But life existing inside a solid rock,
I know, it sounds wild.
or swarming in a literal vacuum, that completely breaks our biological scientific definition of what it means to be alive. Are we just redefining the word life to mean literally anything? Like, how can a piece of granite hold life?
This raises an important question, though, and it is exactly the philosophical friction this framework wants you to confront. We define reality, and we define life based almost entirely on the limits of our biology.
Fair enough.
We assume consciousness requires carbon, oxygen, and cellular division. To address this bias, this worldview uses some really striking animal analogies to challenge our sensory arrogance.
Walk us through those, because I know they deal heavily with the limits of perception.
Yeah, so imagine standing in a massive field on a pitch-black night. All you can see around you are the flashing, rhythmic lights of fireflies.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Because it's dark, you can't see the firefly's thorax, its head, or its wings. If you relied exclusively on what your human eyes could prove in that exact moment, you would have to conclude that these are just disembodied sparks of magic floating in a void.
Right.
But does your inability to see the biological wings mean the wings do not exist?
Obviously not. The wings are there. The lighting conditions just prevent me from perceiving them. And there's another analogy used about an owl, right?
Yes, the owl analogy is perfect for this.
Because we can't see a rat running through that same dark field, but an owl can swoop down and catch it effortlessly. The owl isn't using magic, it just possesses a different retina structure that allows it to capture a wider spectrum of light.
Precisely. The point being driven home here is that the invisible lives in your bedroom, or the consciousness residing inside a solid stone, are not absent. They're simply existing outside the specific retina structure of human perception.
But wait, an owl catching a rat is still biology observing biology. We're talking about a rock here. You're saying this text implies that consciousness is fundamental to the universe, not just a byproduct of complex organic chemistry.
Exactly. You're assuming the life inside the stone requires a biological body to be considered alive. In the Elysium paradigm, life is an expression of spiritual mass and nature, which can anchor itself anywhere.
Anywhere at all.
In a vacuum, in a radio wave, or inside granite. Just because human retinas are tuned to detect biological life doesn't mean the universe isn't entirely saturated with non-biological consciousness right in front of our faces.
Okay, so if the universe is literally saturated with life down to the atomic level, what does this all mean for the macro structure? How does this cosmology organize all of this overlapping, incredibly dense reality?
Well, to grasp the macro structure, you have to completely abandon our traditional astronomical maps. The scale presented here is almost terrifyingly vast. It states that the entire Earth universe, meaning everything we can currently observe with our most powerful telescopes, all the galaxies and superclusters, is nothing more than a single particulate.
A particulate.
It is effectively a speck of dust within a much larger machine.
Just to put some math to that terrifying scale, it states that if you wanted to cross this single particulate, our entire known universe, using a space tunnel, it would take 1,860 years of travel.
Yeah.
And that is covering a distance of roughly 5.85 billion light years. That massive journey only gets you across one speck of dust. Here's where it gets really interesting.
And that speck is part of an incredibly rigid cascading hierarchy.
Yeah.
This particulate is described as an organic whole that revolves around a central core called the heaven world.
Okay.
This entire massive revolving body is termed a law rotary system.
So the law rotary system is the overarching structure. What is inside it?
Inside a single law rotary system, there are over 3,000 rotary river worlds, which are categorized as the large world.
3,000 of them.
Yeah, and if you zoom in on just one of those, it contains nearly 3,000 Milky Way systems, or middle worlds. Zoom in again, and each Milky Way system holds nearly 3,000 solar systems, which are the small worlds.
And it's crucial to note here that a solar system in this context isn't just one sun and 8 planets like ours. It defines a solar system as a relatively independent celestial clan.
Right, it's way bigger.
Some of these systems might have hundreds of suns or tens of thousands of stars.
Yeah. Within this staggering mathematical architecture, Earth is practically a rounding error. It is just a minor, dense member of one small world solar system. It isn't even significant enough to constitute a full world on its own.
But here we hit that fascinating paradox again. Physically traveling across our tiny speck of dust takes thousands of years of light speed travel. But entering the Elysium world, that takes 0 time.
Right.
It is instantaneous. Because you aren't physically traveling across the law rotary system, you are shifting your frequency into a negative space that is already omnipresent.
Now, how does one navigate that omnipresent space? The 3,000 large worlds are divided spiritually into 10 distinct continents.
The 10 continents, right?
These include realms like the Lotus continent, the Borneo continent, the Amida Buddha continent, the Gods continent, all the way up to the highest frequency, the Supreme Authentic Wisdom continent.
When I first read about the 10 continents, I was thinking about it almost like a progression system in a video game, where you have to level up to unlock the next map.
Ah, yeah.
But based on everything we've just discussed about spiritual mass, that feels too artificial. Is it more accurate to think of these continents like buoyancy in an ocean?
That is a far more accurate way to look at it, yes.
Because in an ocean, you can only float at the exact depth that your specific density allows. If you are incredibly dense, you sink to the bottom.
Right.
If you are light, you rise to the surface. You literally cannot force your way into the lighter upper waters without shedding that density first.
That is the exact mechanism. The 10 continents are not physical land masses separated by cosmic oceans, and they aren't divided by neatly cutting up galaxies either.
Right.
They are layered frequencies of existence, divided entirely by the features and mass of the life within them, corresponding to 10 distinct levels of Buddha powers.
And the borders between these frequencies are absolute. There's an analogy used comparing these borders to the Monkey King from Chinese mythology.
Oh, I love this one.
He draws a protective circle on the ground with his staff to protect Monk Tang. If a demon doesn't possess the specific magical power to match that circle, they simply cannot cross the line. It is fundamentally impossible.
Yeah, it's a hard barrier.
In this cosmology, you cannot cross into a higher continent until your spiritual mass is buoyant enough to float there.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it beautifully illustrates the journey of consciousness. The historical Buddha, Sakyamuni, is actually used as an example of this progression.
Really? How so?
Well, before manifesting in the human world, it's said he existed in the Lotus continent, which is sort of the baseline of these 10 continents. To reach humanity, he had to purposefully shift his density, sinking down through a transitional space known as the continent for 3 realms' lives to pass through.
So he made himself heavier to interact with Earth.
Precisely. And after completing his mission on Earth, his spiritual mass had fundamentally changed through that process of self-refinery. He didn't just float back to the Lotus continent where he started, he became more buoyant, ascending to a much higher frequency, the Gods continent.
It's also mentioned that when highly realized spiritual practitioners pass away in our world, the first place their consciousness naturally floats up to is the Lotus continent. It acts as the first rung on the ladder.
Yeah. Earth, in all its physical vastness and complexity, is ultimately revealed to be nothing more than a tiny, incredibly dense stage.
Just a stage.
It is a temporary proving ground where consciousness is placed to either refine or deteriorate its mass. Once the physical body is discarded, whatever specific density you've cultivated dictates exactly which grand spiritual geography you will inhabit next.
It completely reframes the purpose and the stakes of just being alive on a Tuesday. Let's take a breath and recap the sheer scale of the journey we've just mapped out.
Good idea. We covered a lot.
We started in our familiar, tangible, positive universe, a place governed by time and physical decay. We learned that every single night when we go to sleep, Our dreams are actually our limited brains acting as biological receivers, tuning in to the negative universe.
Which is the timeless, formless Elysium world that completely overlays our own.
Exactly. We then looked at how humanity appears from that negative space, redefining the body not as flesh and bone, but as shifting columns of light. We saw how those columns change based on the mechanism of spiritual mass.
And finally, we zoomed out to see that Earth is just a minuscule particulate within a staggering law rotary system.
Where consciousness navigates 10 spiritual continents based entirely on the physics of spiritual buoyancy. It is a massive amount of information to process.
It really is.
But I want to bring this right back down to you, the listener, and your daily life. Because as vast as this cosmology is, it is deeply intimate. Tonight, when you finally close your eyes and go to sleep, pay close attention to the boundaries and the vividness of your dream. Are you stuck in the mundane, or are you seeing the brilliant colors of a higher frequency?
Yeah, that's a great exercise.
According to this framework, whatever you experience is a direct, unfiltered reflection of your own spiritual perception at this exact moment in your life. Or the next time you are sitting alone in your room, look around at the empty space. Remember the assertion that the room is not empty at all. It is teeming with hundreds of millions of unseen lives existing just outside the biological limits of your retina.
And that leaves us with one final, very practical implication to mull over. The mechanics of this universe are incredibly clear. Enduring self-improvement lightens your spiritual mass, allowing you to rise, but enduring self-deterioration makes you dense just as effectively, causing you to sink. The universe is a perfect mirror, and it is constantly recording your frequency. If every action you take, every persistent thought you have, and every belief you hold is actively in real time sculpting the invisible column of light you project into the Elysium world, what color and what height is the column of light you are building in the unseen world around you right now?